The sound of my wedding band hitting the fine china plate was a tiny, metallic ping. It cut through the thick silence of my mother's dining room more sharply than any scream. Everyone froze. My husband, Derek, stared at the simple platinum ring as if it were a spider that had just landed in his mashed potatoes. His sister, Maya, with her mouth still slightly open from the effusive praise she'd been showering on her brother, looked from the ring to my face, her expression morphing from confusion to dawning horror. His brother, Liam, just looked annoyed, as if I'd interrupted a particularly good show. My mother, Evelyn, hadn't moved. She just took a slow sip of her Pinot Noir, her eyes the same cool blue as mine fixed on Derek. The question she'd ask still hung in the air. Simple, reasonable, and utterly devastating. Derek, she'd said, her voice perfectly calm after his grand proclamation about funding Maya's influencer dreams and Liam's indefinite liberal arts journey. That's a significant commitment. Tell me, what is your monthly net income? And what is the projected annual cost of this new family endowment? Derek's proud, slightly flushed smile had melted like wax under a flame. He'd opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyes, so warm and convincing moments before, darted to me, to the ceiling, to his lap. He mumbled something about managing and priorities. That's when I slid the ring off. The weight it left behind wasn't physical. It was the crushing weight of a truth I'd been refusing to see. This moment, this brutal, public silence, was the first clear thought I'd had in 2 years. 2 years. It started, as the best deceptions do, with a story that made him look noble. I met Derek Shaw at a charity gallery opening in Soho, one of those events my mother encouraged me to attend for networking. I was nursing a mediocre Chardonnay, feeling out of place among the aggressively trendy crowd. He was leaning against a wall near a violently abstract painting, looking similarly adrift. He was handsome in a clean-cut, all-American way, dark blonde hair, sincere brown eyes, a smile that seemed to apologize for taking up space. I feel like I need a decoder ring for this one, he said, nodding toward the canvas, which was essentially a giant red smear. I laughed. I think the title is Cardinal Sin of Ambiguity. Ah, that explains the $50,000 price tag, he said, his eyes crinkling. He wasn't dressed in bespoke like most of the men there. His suit was good, but not great. His tie slightly conservative. It was refreshing. We talked. He was an operations manager for a mid-sized logistics company. He asked about me, listened intently when I talked about my work in graphic design, and didn't immediately ask what my father had done in investments or which neighborhood I'd grown up in, Upper East Side. He was normal, grounded, real. Our first real date was at a noisy, fantastic Italian place in the village, not some minimalist tasting menu temple. Over shared tiramisu, he told me about his family. His parents died in a car accident when he was 20, leaving him to take care of his teenage siblings, Maya and Liam. It was tough, he said, swirling his fork, not looking for sympathy, just stating a fact. I was in college, had to switch to night classes, work 2 jobs. Maya was a mess. Liam was angry at the world. But you do what you have to do, right? They're my family. My heart did a little flip. I'd grown up with every advantage. Private schools, summers in the Hamptons, a trust fund from my grandfather. The hardest thing I'd ever done was choose a major. Derek's quiet sacrifice, his sense of duty, seemed profoundly admirable. It was the opposite of the calculated, status-obsessed men I usually met. They're lucky to have you, I said, meaning it. He shrugged, a humble, self-deprecating gesture that became familiar. I just wish I could do more for them now. Maya's got this dream of being a lifestyle content creator. She's got the spark, you know. And Liam, he's figuring himself out. School's a struggle, but he's a smart kid. He just needs the right support. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. You're a good man. Derek Shaw. He looked at our joined hands, then up at me, his eyes soft. You're the first person who's ever made me feel like maybe I did something right. Nicole, the hook was set, not with flash or wealth, but with the potent allure of being needed, of being the one who could appreciate a diamond in the rough. I saw the hardworking, selfless hero. I didn't see the web. We fell into a rhythm. He was attentive, charming in an unpolished way. He remembered my favorite flowers, peonies. Braved meeting my formidable mother, Evelyn, who was politely reserved, and always made me feel like the center of his world. When he talked about the future, it was about building a life, a real home, concepts that felt solid and pure compared to the transactional relationships I saw around me. The first crack in the gilded surface was so small I barely noticed it. We were at my apartment, Dada Bright. Spacious one-bedroom my parents had bought as a graduation gift about 3 months in. He was working on his laptop, a bulky, aging thing, and let out a frustrated sigh. Everything okay? I asked, curled on the sofa with a book. This dinosaur, he muttered, tapping the keyboard. It keeps freezing. The company software updates are killing it. I spent 2 hours on a report today and lost it all. It's killing my productivity. He ran a hand through his hair. The picture of a man weighed down by practical burdens. I've been saving for a new one. But with helping Liam with his spring semester books and Maya's car insurance, it's just on the back burner. Oh, Derek, that's awful. You can't work like that. It's fine. I'll manage. I always do. He gave me that tired, brave smile. The next day, I went to the Apple store. I bought him the top-of-the-line MacBook Pro. Loaded. It felt like a wonderful, generous surprise. When I presented it to him, his eyes widened. Nicole, no. This is too much. I can't accept this. Don't be silly. It's a tool for your job. Consider it an investment in my favorite operations manager's sanity. I was giddy with the pleasure of giving, of solving a problem for this man who worked so hard. He pulled me into a fierce hug. You're incredible. You know that. No one's ever. He shook his head, as if overwhelmed. Thank you. This means everything. He used that laptop every day. Sometimes, when I saw him focused on the screen, I'd feel a warm glow. I'd helped. I'd made his life easier. That's what you did for someone you loved. A few weeks later, I was having brunch with my oldest friend, Sasha, a razor-sharp corporate lawyer. So, the new laptop fixed all his problems? She asked, spearing a piece of avocado toast. Seems like it. He's been in a great mood. Sasha sipped her mimosa, and he just happened to mention the old one was dying, the cost of a new one, and his various financial obligations, all in one conversation? I frowned. It wasn't like that. He was just venting. I offered, Nicole, my love, I've deposed enough masters of manipulation to recognize a trial balloon. He floated a problem, and you immediately swooped in with a $5,000 solution. He didn't even have to ask. I felt a flash of irritation. That's cynical. Derek's not like that. He's the least manipulative person I know. He's always giving to everyone else. Maybe you're just jealous. I found a nice, normal guy who isn't a hedge fund bro. Sasha held up her hands in surrender. Okay. I'm just looking out for you. Just keep your eyes open. Nice. Normal guys who are constantly broke while dating a woman with a trust fund. Let's just say I've seen the math, and it rarely works out in the woman's favor. He's not constantly broke. I snapped. Defensive. He's responsible. He takes care of his family. There's a difference. And he's never once asked me for anything. Yet, Sasha said softly, but she let it drop. I left brunch annoyed. Sasha didn't understand. She approached everything like a contract negotiation. She didn't understand the give and take of a real relationship, of building something together. Derek's family-first attitude was a virtue, not a liability. It showed character, depth. When I saw Derek that evening, I felt a pang of guilt for even listening to Sasha's doubts. He'd made me dinner that a slightly burned but heartfelt attempt at chicken piccata. He asked about my day, laughed at my stories, and never once mentioned his own stresses. He was exactly the man I thought he was. Decent, hardworking, a little rough around the edges, but golden on the inside. As I fell asleep that night, his arm around me, I dismissed Sasha's warning entirely. She was wrong. What Derek and I had was real. It was pure. It was the kind of love that wasn't about spreadsheets and prenups. It was about trust and sacrifice and building a life from the ground up. I was so sure. I was so blissfully, dangerously naive. The first strand of silk had been laid, and I, enamored with the spinner, mistook it for a safety net. The strand of silk became a net, woven not in a day, but stitch by subtle stitch. Our wedding was a small, elegant affair at the Cosmopolitan on 57th. My mother paid for it, a fact Derek accepted with a mixture of gratitude and a barely there tightness around his eyes that I mistook for humility. In his toast, he didn't talk about our future, but about family. I've spent so long trying to hold my little family together, he said, his voice thick with emotion, his hand on my shoulder. And now, finding Nicole, I feel like I can finally breathe. She's not just my wife. She's the missing piece that makes our family whole. To Nicole, and to our family, the table of my friends and relatives applauded politely. Maya and Liam, seated at the family table, beamed and clinked their glasses loudly. I felt a warm glow, touched by his words. Our family, IT sounded inclusive, generous. I didn't yet hear the quiet hum of annexation in that phrase. The annexation began, appropriately, as a temporary measure. We'd returned from a short Napa honeymoon to my apartment, our apartment now. A week later, Derek's phone rang. It was Maya, her voice a frantic, tinny sob I could hear from the couch. Derek, it's a disaster. My roommate is a psycho. She threw all my stuff in the hallway. I have nowhere to go. Can I please just crash on your couch for a few days until I figure this out? Derek's face was the picture of brotherly concern. Of course, Maya, of course. Don't cry. We're here for you. He hung up and turned to me, his expression pleading. You don't mind, do you, honey? It'll just be for a few days. She's in a real bind. Mind, I was the new wife, eager to be supportive, to be the cool, understanding partner. Of course not, I said. Tell her to come over. A few days became a week. Maya, all of 22, with aspirations of being the next big wellness influencer, moved in with 3 oversized suitcases and a sense of entitlement that took my breath away. She took over the living room, her ring lights and yoga mats permanently arranged, filming morning routines and what I eat in a day videos that involved using every bowl and blender I owned. She never cleaned up. Maya, could you maybe rinse the blender after your superfood smoothie? I asked one morning, trying to keep my voice light. The kale gets kind of cemented on. She pouted, not looking up from her phone. Sorry, Nicole, I was just so in the zone. You know how content creation is that the muse strikes. You can't stop for mundane stuff. Derek always says I have to nurture my creative flow. Derek, when I mentioned it that night, just laughed and pulled me into a hug. That's just Maya. She's an artist, a bit messy. Cut her some slack. Babe, she's had a tough time. Liam's arrival was less dramatic, but equally permanent. He was 20, a community college student whose major seemed to be undeclared life. He showed up one Friday with a duffel bag. Hey, bro, landlord's doing renovations. Said it's uninhabitable for a month. Mind if I hole up here? Derek didn't even glance at me. Sure, man, you can take the alcove in the den. Nicole, we'll get the air mattress, right? The den was my home office for a month? I asked, the words slipping out. Derek's smile faltered. It's just temporary. Nick, he's family. We can't let him sleep in his car. And so, The air mattress took up permanent residence. Liam's few days stretched. He slept until noon, left a trail of energy drink cans and video game controllers, and borrowed my car more than I drove it, always forgetting to refill the gas tank. The financial binds started small. Liam needed $200 for a mandatory lab fee. Maya's car needed new tires, $400. Derek would come to me, his face a mask of weary frustration. Liam's such a kid. He blew his money on concert tickets, but he can't fail the class. I'll cover it, but it'll set back our savings for the patio furniture you wanted. He'd look so defeated. My mind would race. It's just $200. For $100. We're married now. What's mine is his. And he's trying so hard to don't worry about it. I'd hear myself say, I can transfer it. We'll get the furniture later. You're a lifesaver. He'd murmur, kissing my forehead. I don't know what I'd do without you. They don't have anyone else. You know, the first real test of the web came on a Tuesday evening. Maya was sprawled on my cream-colored sectional, scrolling through Instagram. I was wearing a simple but elegant gold necklace my mother had given me for my 21st birthday. Oh my God, Nicole, I love that necklace. Maya cooed, sitting up. It's so classic. It would be perfect with this outfit I'm planning for my collaboration with Solstice Jewelry next week. It's light, exactly their aesthetic. I smiled politely, touching the pendant. Thanks. It was a gift from my mom. Do you wear it a lot? She asked, her eyes wide and innocent. Not really. It's more for special occasions. A slow smile spread across her face. So you wouldn't, miss sit if it wasn't here for a few days? Just for the shoot? It would mean, everything for my brand alignment. I could tag you. A cold little finger traced down my spine. I'd rather not lend it out. Maya, it's sentimental. Her face fell instantly. A performance of profound hurt. Oh, okay. No, I get it. It's fine. She went back to her phone. The air now thick with her silent, manufactured disappointment. That night, in bed, Derek was distant. He turned away from me, scrolling on his phone. Everything okay? I asked, rubbing his shoulder. He sighed, a heavy, world-weary sound. Maya's just really upset. About the necklace? It's not about the necklace. Nicole. He turned to look at me, his expression one of gentle, patronizing disappointment. It's about feeling like part of the family, like she's trusted. She looks up to you. You know, she sees you as the sister she never had. Asking to borrow a necklace, it was her way of reaching out. And you basically told her she's not good enough to touch your things. I sat up, stunned. That is not what I said. It's a valuable, sentimental piece for my mother. I don't lend it to anyone. See, that's the thing, he said softly, putting his phone down and taking my hand. His touch was warm, but his words were ice. You grew up with all of this. Beautiful things. Security. You don't know what it's like to have so little that a simple gesture of sharing means the world. To you, it's a necklace. To her, it's a symbol of acceptance. And by rejecting her, you're reminding her, reminding a lot of us, of where we come from, that we're just guests in your beautiful life. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. He'd framed my perfectly reasonable boundary as a cruel act of classist exclusion. He'd turned my property into a test of microactor, and I was failing. I didn't mean it like that. I whispered, my certainty crumbling. I know you didn't. Sweetie, he pulled me into his arms. You have a good heart. You just don't always think. Maybe you could find something else? Something you don't wear as much? Just to show her you care. It would mean so much to me to see my two favorite girls getting along. The next day, feeling sick to my stomach but desperate to erase the selfish, elitist picture he'd painted of me, I went to my jewelry box. I couldn't bring myself to give her my birthday necklace. Instead, I took a pair of diamond stud earrings I rarely wore at a college graduation gift and presented them to Maya. For your shoot, I said, forcing a smile. Her face lit up with pure, avaricious joy. OMG. Nicole, you're the best. They're perfect. She hugged me. A quick, perfunctory squeeze. Her eyes already on the earrings sparkle. That night, Derek was sweet, attentive, proud of me. See, that's my girl. That's what family does. The coldness was gone, replaced by radiant approval. The relief was dizzying. I had bought peace, and his love, for the price of a pair of earrings. A part of me, a small, quiet part, one buried deep, knew it was a ransom. But the larger, louder part of me just wanted the warm, loving Derek back. The transaction was complete. My boundary had a price tag, and they now knew it. The web held me tighter. The annexation of my space was complete. The annexation of my finances began with a soft, probing question, wrapped in the guise of marital trust. It happened a few months after Maya and Liam's temporary stays had become a permanent, noisy reality. We were at a mediocre chain steakhouse, celebrating Derek's imminent promotion, a topic that surfaced every quarter but never seemed to materialize, over a shared chocolate lava cake. He took my hand, his thumb stroking my knuckles. You know, planning for the future with you, it makes all the hard stuff worth it, he said, his brown eyes warm. I want to give you the world. Nicole, a real house, maybe up in Westchester. Kids, the whole dream. He sighed, a happy, contented sound. My company's 401k match is a joke, though, and with helping the kids, it's hard to build anything substantial. How do you, with your family's background, did your parents set things up for you? Like, long term? The question felt natural, intimate. He was thinking about our future. My guard, already worn thin by constant accommodation, was down. Well, my grandfather set up a trust fund for me. It became fully accessible when I turned 25, and my dad left me some securities in his will. Mom manages the bulk of the family assets, but I have my own portfolio. Derek's expression didn't change, but his thumb stopped moving. There was a new, intense focus in his gaze, as if I just switched from speaking English to revealing the secrets of the universe. A trust fund, he repeated, his voice carefully neutral. That's amazing. Your family really planned ahead. What's that like? Not having to worry? I shrugged, a little self-conscious. It's not a crazy amount. It provides a safety net, allows for investments. My mom's always been big on financial independence for women. I said it lightly, but a tiny, buried part of me noted the shift in him. The air felt different. Your mom is a remarkable woman, he said, the smile returning. Whiter now, brighter. It reached his eyes in a new way. It was a calculating smile. No wonder you're so level-headed about money. You come from good stock. From that night on, Derek's future talk evolved. It was no longer an abstract someday. It became a detailed blueprint, and his siblings were suddenly integral parts of the foundation. A week later, as we were browsing real estate apps in bed, he zoomed in on a large colonial in Scarsdale. Look at this one. For bedrooms. Finished basement. That's huge for 2 people. I said, snuggling closer. Well, think about it, he said casually, scrolling. Master for us. 1 for a nursery, 1 for a home office, and the 4th could be a guest room. You know, for when Maya or Liam need to visit. Or if, one of them hits a rough patch and needs to stay for a bit while they get back on their feet. It's good to have the space to help family. The idea lodged in my brain. Uncomfortable. He wasn't planning a home for us. He was planning a permanent satellite dormitory for his siblings. I said nothing, just made a non-committal hum. The probing continued. He started showing a keen, uncharacteristic interest in my investments. Liam has this friend, Kyle, really sharp guy. He's starting a tech company, an app for sustainable grocery delivery. It's the next big thing. He's looking for angel investors. The minimum buy-in is a bit steep for me, but with your trust fund, the potential return is insane. We could be in on the ground floor, a cold knot formed in my stomach. Wheat, he was now casually suggesting I risk my inheritance. And why grandfather's legacy dead on his brother's friend's startup? I'm pretty conservative with that money. Derek, my financial advisor, has a specific strategy. His face fell into an expression of wounded enthusiasm. Oh, okay. I just thought it's a golden opportunity, and it would be a way for us to build something together. You know, not just live off your family's old money, but create our own. The implication was clear. By not investing, I was being passive, unambitious, content to be a trust fund baby. The guilt trip was now professionally diversified into my portfolio. The arrival of my mother, Evelyn, for a weekend visit felt like the landing of a UN peacekeeping force in a war zone I hadn't fully admitted was a war. I'd frantically cleaned, hiding Maya's ring lights and shoving Liam's gaming detritus into a closet. Derek was on his best behavior, charming, deferential, pouring her wine before she asked. Dinner was a fraud affair. Maya monopolized the conversation with vapid tales of brand deals that didn't exist. Liam grunted answers to Evelyn's polite questions about his studies. Derek kept trying to steer the talk toward future plans. Westchester has such excellent school districts. He mentioned serving my mother more roasted potatoes. Indeed, Evelyn replied, her tone neutral. She was a slender, elegant woman in her 60s, whose quiet observation felt more powerful than any outburst. Her eyes missed nothing. Later, as I washed dishes and she dried, the real conversation began. The brother is lazy, she stated, not a question, as she meticulously polished a water glass. The sister is a narcissist with the work ethic of a mayfly. Mom, don't mummy. Nicole, I have 2 eyes. And Derek. She paused, placing the glass on the shelf with deliberate care. He watches you like you're a stock ticker. Every time you mention your studio, your friends, your plans that don't involve him, his smile gets a little tight. Every time you talk about anything with a price tag, his pupils dilate. It's not love, darling. It's an assessment. I felt a surge of hot, defensive anger. That's not fair. You've never liked him because he didn't come from money, because he's not some Yale-educated banker. He's hardworking, and he cares about his family. Something you might understand if you weren't so obsessed with spreadsheets. Evelyn didn't flinch. She just looked at me with a profound, weary sadness that was worse than any anger. This has nothing to do with pedigree. Nicole, it has to do with character. A man who allows his adult siblings to leech off his new wife is not family-oriented. He is either weak or complicit. And from the way he just suggested over dinner that I might want to invest in a revolutionary new energy drink his brother's friend is concocting in a garage, I'm leaning heavily toward complicit. She put down the towel and took my wet hands in her dry, cool ones. Listen to me. However much you love him, you must protect what is yours. Do not commingle your trust fund. Do not put his name on the deed if you buy property. See a lawyer. Draw up a post-nuptial agreement that clearly separates assets. What you brought into this marriage stays yours. I wrenched my hands away. A post-nup? That's what you think of my marriage? That I need a prenup after the fact? That's disgusting. Mom, it's saying I don't trust him. It would destroy him. And if his feelings are destroyed by a simple request for financial clarity, then what are his feelings based on? She asked, her voice razor sharp. Protect yourself. Nicole, before there's nothing left to protect. I refused to hear it. I saw my mother's pragmatism as cynicism, her vast experience as jaded bias. She didn't understand the purity of our love, the depth of Derek's sacrifices. He needed me to believe in him, unconditionally. To suggest a postnup would be a betrayal, proof that I was, deep down, the snobby, suspicious heiress he sometimes joked about me being. I'm not doing that. I said, my voice trembling with self-righteous conviction. My marriage is built on trust, not legal documents. I won't insult him that way. Evelyn looked at me for a long moment, the sadness deepening. She saw the wall I'd built did not to keep danger out, but to keep the truth out. She gave a small, resigned nod. Very well. Just remember, the lock on a safe is not an insult to the homeowner. It's a precaution against those who might try to take what isn't theirs. She left the next day. Derek was effusive in his goodbye, relieved she was gone. Your mom is intense, he said, wrapping an arm around me as her town car pulled away, always sizing everything up. Ha! Like she's at a board meeting. He laughed, but it was tinged with a victor's contempt. He had won. I had chosen him over her, the most powerful ally I had, the one person who could see the web clearly. I had just sent away, convinced her warnings were poison. That night, Derek brought up the Westchester house again, with your trust fund for a down payment and your portfolio for closing costs. We could make a really aggressive offer, he said, his eyes alight with a vision that was entirely his own. The lock on the safe, in his mind, was already picked. The assessment was complete. The real takeover could now begin, and I, the willing occupant of the golden cage, had just thrown away the key my mother tried to hand me. A strange calm descended after my mother's visit. It was the quiet of a forest after a predator has passed through. Tense, watchful, but deceptively still. Derek was perfect, attentive, affectionate, asking about my day, bringing home my favorite peonies without occasion. It felt like the early days again, and I clung to it, desperate to believe my mother's warnings were a mirage, that this warmth was the true reality. The crack in this fragile peace appeared not with a shout, but with a sigh. It was a Thursday evening. Derek had been quiet for days, a cloud of preoccupation hanging over him. He'd stare blankly at the TV, push his food around his plate, and his usual, patient smiles at Maya and Liam's antics restrained. Everything okay at work? I finally asked, curling next to him on the couch after his siblings had retreated to their respective domains. He ran a hand over his face, a gesture of profound weariness I'd come to know well. It's just stagnant. I'm hitting a ceiling. Jeff got the senior director promotion. Jeff was a colleague, less experienced, but with an MBA from a decent school. They're talking about restructuring and all the new leadership roles they want advanced degrees. An MBA is basically a prerequisite now. His voice was heavy with a frustration that felt genuine. My heart ached for him. He worked so hard, carried so much. This was a real, career-based problem, not a nebulous family drama. Could you do an executive MBA? Part-time? I suggested gently. He let out a short, bitter laugh. Have you seen the tuition for those programs? We're talking 90, 100,000. Plus, it's a huge time commitment on top of my job. It's just not feasible. Not with our current obligations. He gestured vaguely in the direction of Maya's room, from which the thump of bass was emanating. I'll just have to grind it out. Hope they recognize loyalty over a piece of paper. He offered me a smile so sad and resigned it felt like a physical weight in my chest. Don't worry about it. Sweetheart, it's my problem to figure out. The next few days were a masterclass in silent suffering. He'd get emails about industry conferences he couldn't attend, LinkedIn updates from former classmates celebrating new, lofty positions. Each one was a tiny pinprick to his pride, and he made sure I felt everyone. He'd go quiet. His shoulders slumped. He stopped initiating intimacy. When I'd touch him, he'd flinch slightly, as if reminded of his own perceived inadequacies. The warm, loving Derek receded, replaced by a hollow, defeated stranger. The apartment, always full of his siblings' noise, now felt oppressively silent in the spaces he occupied. Guilt, that old, familiar enemy, began to coil in my gut. Our current obligations, he was carrying the weight of 3 adults. 4. including me, on his salary. He wanted to better himself, to provide more, and was being held back by his family, by our situation, by the very dynamic I was, by my reluctance to fully fund his siblings, perpetuating. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, his quiet despair echoing in the dark. Sasha's voice whispered, "Trial balloon." My mother's voice countered, "Protect yourself," but a louder, more desperate voice, the one that loved him, the one that hated seeing him in pain, argued back, "This is different. This is his career, his future, our future. He hasn't asked for a thing. He's just hurting." After 3 sleepless nights, I made my decision. It felt less like a choice and more like a moral imperative to save the man I loved from drowning. I waited until we were alone. After a particularly quiet dinner, "Derek," I began, my voice sounding too loud in the quiet kitchen. "This MBA thing. I've been thinking." He looked up from his phone, his eyes guarded. "Tired? Yeah. I want you to do it. The executive program. The one at Columbia." He stared at me, then shook his head, a slow, defeated motion. "Nicole, no. We can't. It's a fortune. We can't. I have savings. Not from the trust. Just my own. From my design work." This was a partial truth. The savings existed, but they were intertwined. The point was, I was offering. It's an investment. In you. In us. His reaction was everything I'd hoped for, and nothing I should have trusted. His eyes welled up with genuine-looking tears. He came around the table, knelt beside my chair, and took my hands in his. They were trembling. "Baby, no. I can't let you do that. It's too much. It's not a loan," I said, my own eyes filling in response to his emotion. "It's a gift. You deserve this. You work so hard for everyone else. Let someone do this for you." He rested his forehead against my knee, his shoulders shaking. It looked like a sob of gratitude. When he looked up, his face was a mask of awed humility. You are the most incredible woman. I don't deserve you." He pulled me into a fierce hug. "I'll pay you back. Every cent. I swear. This is going to change everything. For us. I'll get that promotion. We'll get the house. I'll make you so proud." In the weeks that followed, he was the Derek of my dreams. He doted on me. He handled his siblings with uncharacteristic firmness. "Can't you see Nicole and I are talking? Give us some space." He brought me coffee in bed, planned romantic dinners, talked incessantly and excitedly about business strategy and course modules. The cloud had lifted. I had lifted it. The transaction, my money for his love and our shared future, felt, in that moment, not just fair, but noble. The illusion shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. I had a migraine and left work early. The apartment was supposed to be empty. Derek was at work. Maya was at a brand meetup. Liam God knows where. I slipped in quietly, heading straight for the bedroom and the solace of a dark room. As I passed Derek's closed study door, I heard his voice, not the weary, loving tone I knew, but a buoyant, boasting, unfamiliar one. He was on the phone, and he was laughing. "Yeah, man. It's locked in. Start of the semester. Columbia. Baby. Nah, not a dime. She's covering the whole thing." Of course she agreed. "I told you. It was all about the presentation. You gotta look defeated. You know, like the world's on your shoulders." She eats that poor, responsible guy's shit up. Honestly, it was almost too easy. A few sad sighs, a little emotional distance, bam. She's offering up her savings like a guilty confession. I know, right? It's an investment in us. He mimicked my voice, a high-pitched, simpering caricature that made my blood turn to ice. The best part? She thinks she came up with the idea. Yeah, the silent agreement. She gets to feel like a hero. I get a 6-figure degree. Win-win. Oh, absolutely. This is just the start. The trust fund is the real prize. But you gotta warm up the mark. She's so naive. It's almost cute. thinks love is about sharing. It's about acquisition. Man, strategic acquisition. I stood frozen in the hallway, my migraine forgotten, replaced by a seismic nausea. The words weren't just sounds, they were scalpels, dissecting the last 2 years of my life with clinical, cruel precision. Presentation. Eats that shit up. Too easy. The mark. Strategic acquisition. Each term was a bullet, tearing through the fabric of my reality. The conversation shifted to football, to some crude joke about a waitress at his favorite bar. I stumbled back, away from the door, my hand pressed to my mouth to stifle the sound that wanted to escape. A scream, a sob, something primal. I fled to the bedroom, locking the door. I sat on the edge of the bed, shaking. The numbness was absolute at first. Then it receded, leaving behind a raw, screaming pain. Every loving look, every tender word, every moment of shared frustration. It had all been a presentation, a calculated performance to acquire me resources. I was a mark, a bank account with a heartbeat. The sound of his key in the front door jolted me into action. I wiped my face, took a shuddering breath, and walked out to the living room as he entered, humming. "Hey, you're home early," he said, his face lighting up with that perfect, fake smile. He moved to kiss me. I took a step back. "Who are you talking to?" My voice was flat, alien. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes flickered, just for a millisecond. Oh, just Mike from accounting. Boring work stuff. Why? I heard you. The 3 words hung in the air, leaden. He cocked his head, the picture of confused innocence. Heard me? Baby. What's wrong? You look pale. He reached for me again, his concern a masterful act. I evaded his touch. I heard you on the phone. About the MBA. About me. About the silent agreement. About me being a mark. My voice broke on the last word. The transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. The confusion on his face melted into something else, not guilt, but a wounded, profound anger. His shoulders slumped, not in defeat, but in the posture of a man grievously wronged. "You were eavesdropping in me." His voice was low, trembling with what sounded like hurt. "Nicole! God, that was a private call. With my brother." He had shifted the ground beneath me, from accused to accuser. "You were bragging about manipulating me." I cried, the tears coming now. I was venting. He shot back, his own eyes glistening. "To my brother. Do you have any idea the pressure I'm under? To provide? To be the rock for everyone. I was feeling like shit, like a failure for letting you pay for this. And I was trying to sound like a big man in front of Liam. To save face. That's all it was." He took a step toward me, his expression raw with a pain that looked utterly real. "You took a moment of stupid, private male bravado and twisted it into this monstrous thing. Do you really think so little of me? Do you really believe I could be that person?" The certainty I had felt moments ago began to dissolve under the acid rain of his rebuttal. Venting, saving face, male bravado that IT was plausible. Men did that, didn't they? Said ugly, exaggerated things to appear strong? "You called me a mark," I whispered, but the conviction was bleeding out of me. He let out a choked sob, running his hands through his hair, a figure of speech, a stupid, awful, locker room figure of speech. "Because I feel guilty, because I hate that I can't do this for myself, for us. And now you think I'm some kind of con artist?" He looked at me, and the devastation in his eyes was a masterpiece. "You've just destroyed everything. The trust. I opened up to you. I let you see how insecure I was, and you use it against me. You listen at doors and think the worst." He was crying now, genuine tears streaking his face. The performance was so complete, so overwhelming, that it overwrote the cold, calculating voice I'd heard. The evidence of my ears was being systematically dismantled by the evidence of his tears. The guilt returned, a tsunami this time, washing away my anger, my hurt, leaving only a desperate need to fix the catastrophic mistake I had made. I had called my husband a liar, a user, based on a snippet of a private conversation. I had become the suspicious, untrustworthy wife my mother warned him I could be. Derek, I stammered, my own tears flowing freely. Do you have any idea what you've done? He whispered, the heartbreak in his voice a physical force. I thought we were a team. I thought you believed in me. That was the killing blow. Believed in him. I had stopped. In that moment of listening, I had stopped believing. And in his world, that was the ultimate sin. I broke. I crossed the space between us and clung to him. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean. I was just shocked. I heard those words. He held me, but his body was stiff, unyielding. You should have come to me. You should have asked, not assumed the worst. I know. I'm sorry. Please. He sighed, a heavy, exhausted sound, and slowly his arms wrapped around me. The forgiveness was tentative, conditional. It's okay. He murmured into my hair. We'll be okay. But, Nicole, you have to trust me. If we don't have trust, we have nothing. I nodded against his chest, a frantic, eager movement. I do. I will. I promise. He held me for a long time. The silent agreement was reaffirmed, not through love, but through my capitulation. I had caught a glimpse of the monster in the shadows, and when he held up a mirror showing my own distrustful face, I had been so terrified of being the villain that I begged the monster for forgiveness. The cage door, which had swung violently open for a second, now slammed shut with a final, deafening click, and I, the bird inside, was too busy apologizing for trying to escape to even hear the sound. The peace that followed my apology was a thin, brittle veneer. I walked on eggshells, hyper-aware of every word, every gesture, desperate to prove my trust. Derek accepted my contrition like a king granting a pardon gracious but distant, a constant, unspoken reminder that my place in his good graces was now conditional. The MBA payments began, a regular, substantial drain on my savings account. Each automated transfer felt like a suture holding the fragile shell of our marriage together. With the financial commitment secured, Maya and Liam's sense of entitlement shifted from passive to aggressively proactive. They no longer waited for Derek to broker their needs. They came directly to me, their requests escalating with alarming speed. It started over breakfast. Maya was scrolling through a plastic surgeon's Instagram feed, sighing loudly. Ugh, Dr. Mendelssohn's work is everything, she moaned, shoving her phone in my face. A woman with unnaturally plump lips and sharp cheekbones smiled back. I've been consulting with his office. For my brand. It's light, essential. The it girl aesthetic is very specific. He says I'd be a perfect candidate for a subtle rhinoplasty and lip filler, a total game changer. I kept my eyes on my coffee. That's a big decision. Maya, it's an investment, she corrected, her tone implying I was slow. The ROI on look-based influencer marketing is insane, but the consultation fee alone is $1,000. And the procedures, she let out a wistful sigh. It's just out of reach right now. My AdSense revenue is, pathetic. She looked at me, her eyes wide and hopeful. Derek said you're amazing with financial planning. Do you think maybe there's a way to work it into the family budget? Like a business loan? My grip tightened on my mug. The family budget, a budget I funded. For a business that consisted of her taking selfies in my living room. I don't think cosmetic surgery qualifies as a business expense. Maya, and it's a significant amount of money. Her face fell into the practiced, wounded expression I knew so well. Right, of course. It's just when you have the right look. The opportunities come. But I get it. It's a lot to ask. She slumped in her chair, the very picture of defeated dreams. That afternoon, Liam cornered me as I was trying to work in my now cramped den. his air mattress a permanent monument to his indolence. Hey, Nick, got a sec? I'm kind of in the middle of something. Liam, it'll just take a sec. He leaned against the doorframe. My piece of crap, Civic, finally died. Transmission, totaled. I found an amazing deal on a used Mustang. A 2018. Guy needs cash fast. It's, like, 5 grand below market value. A headache began to pulse behind my eyes. And you need a co-signer? He chuckled, as if I'd made a cute joke. Nah, my credit's trash. But a cash buy would save even more. Derek mentioned you had some liquidity from, selling some stocks or whatever last month. It'd be a short-term bridge. I'll pay you back as soon as my student loan disbursement comes in. Swear. The audacity was breathtaking. They were no longer asking for help with necessities. They were presenting their whims, vanity, and a sports CAS, strategic investments, with my money as the venture capital. And Derek had clearly been discussing my finances with them, painting a target on my remaining resources. That night, as Derek reviewed flashcards for his financial accounting module, I unloaded. The words spilled out in a frantic, desperate torrent. Maya's nose job, Liam's Mustang, the constant pressure, the draining of my savings. I can't do it anymore. Derek, I'm hemorrhaging money. My safety net is gone. They're asking for tens of thousands of dollars for wants, not needs. It has to stop. Derek put his flashcards down slowly. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, deeply, profoundly disappointed. It was worse than anger. Nicole, he said, his voice soft and measured. The voice of a patient teacher dealing with a selfish child. Listen to yourself. Hemorrhaging money. Safety net. It's all about your money, your security. What about their dreams? Their potential? Their dreams are funded by my inheritance. I shot back, my voice rising. Ours. He corrected sharply, a flash of steel in his eyes. When we got married, it became ours. Or did you mean those vows? For better? For worse? Or just for better? As long as it doesn't inconvenience your portfolio? He stood up, pacing, running a hand through his hair. I thought you were different. I thought you understood that family means sometimes you carry the load. Maya's brand could be huge. Liam just needs a reliable car to get to his internship. These aren't frivolous things. They're stepping stones. But all you see is the price tag. He stopped and looked at me, his expression one of sad revelation. I'm starting to think your mother was right about you. The words were a physical blow. What? She warned me, in her own polite, icy way, that you were used to a certain life. That generosity had limits for you. I defended you. I told her she was wrong, that your heart was as big as your bank account. But now, he shook his head, the wounded idealist. Now I see the limits. And it's not about the money. Nicole, it's about your spirit. You're becoming transactional, cold. The woman I fell in love with would have seen this as an investment in people. He was reframing the narrative yet again. My reasonable financial fear was now a moral failing, a character flaw. He was comparing me to the ghost of my generous, loving self and finding me wanting. The guilt, expertly administered, began its toxic drip. I'm not cold, I whispered, tears of frustration welling up. I'm scared. I've paid for your degree. I cover half the rent they don't contribute to. The groceries, the utilities, they triple. My savings are almost gone. What happens if I get sick? If I lose a client? We would figure it out, he said, moving closer, his voice dropping to an intimate, coaxing tone. That's what marriage is, a partnership. You're thinking like an individual. We're a family. And in a family, when one person has resources, they share them to elevate everyone. He cupped my face, his thumbs wiping my tears. His touch felt like a brand. I need you to be my partner. Nicole, not my accountant. I need the woman who bought me a laptop because she believed in me. Where did she go? He was using my own past generosity as a weapon to bludgeon me into more. The manipulation was so layered, so insidious, it short-circuited my logic. Was I being selfish? Was holding on to the remnants of my financial independence a sign of a small, ungenerous heart? In the hall of mirrors he'd built, every reflection showed a monster greedy, status-obsessed, which hoarding her gold while her husband's family struggled. The final straw came a week later. Over a tense, silent dinner, Derek casually mentioned that my mother's condo in Miami had been sitting empty since her last trip. Such a waste of a prime asset. He mused, stabbing a piece of chicken. The HOA fees alone must be a sinkhole. You know, Maya was just saying how the lighting in South Beach is perfect for her summer content series. The pastel backdrops, the Art Deco, it's her exact brand aesthetic. It'd be a shame for the place to just depreciate. He looked at me, his gaze steady. He wasn't asking. He was presenting a solution to a problem I didn't know he had. The ask was no longer for money. It was for a key piece of my family's property. The boundary he was testing wasn't financial. It was territorial. Something inside me snapped. The constant pressure, the guilt, the erosion of myself, all crystallized into a white-hot fury. No, the word was flat, final, like a stone dropped on a table. Derek blinked. No, no. Maya is not using my mother's Miami condo as a free photo shoot location. No to the nose job. No to the Mustang. No, just no. Silence. Liam snorted. Maya's mouth dropped open in theatrical shock. Derek's face went carefully blank. He slowly put his fork down. I see. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly. Well, if that's your final word on how our family resources are allocated. He walked out of the dining room. A moment later, I heard the front door open and slam shut. He didn't come home that night, or the next. The silence in the apartment was absolute and terrifying. Maya and Liam tiptoed around me, shooting me venomous looks. My phone was silent. Panic, cold and clammy, replaced the anger. What had I done? I'd drawn a line, and he'd left. The fantasy I'd clung to that beneath the pressure. He loved me seemed to evaporate with his absence. The fear of being alone, of having failed, of being the cold woman he accused me of being, was more terrifying than any financial drain. On the third day, as I sat hollow-eyed on the couch, my phone buzzed. A text from Derek. I'm at Mike's. I need space. Your no wasn't just about a condo. It was about rejecting my family. Rejecting me. I don't know who you are anymore. The message wasn't a plea. It was an indictment. And it worked. The thought of him gone forever, of this being the end, triggered a primal panic. I couldn't breathe. All the logic, all the rightful anger, was drowned out by the deafening fear of abandonment. I picked up my phone, my hand shaking. I called him. He let it go to voicemail. I texted, "Please come home. We need to talk." An hour later, "What is there to talk about? You've made your priorities clear." I'm sorry that I typed. The words tasting like ash. I was stressed. I overreacted. "Please." Another agonizing hour. Then, "I'll come by tomorrow evening. We'll talk." The day was an eternity. When he walked in, he looked tired, sad, and heartbreakingly handsome. He didn't hug me. He just stood there, waiting. "I'm sorry." I blurted out, the tears coming. "I don't want to lose you. I don't want to be that person. The condo, it's fine. Maya can use it for a month. Just not during spring break. And the car, maybe we can help Liam with a down payment on something more reasonable. Just please come home." He watched me cry, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he opened his arms. I fell into them, sobbing with relief. "Shoo," he murmured into my hair, his hand stroking my back. "It's okay. We have to be on the same team. Baby, you have to trust that I know what's best for our family. Can you do that?" I nodded against his chest, a desperate, jerky motion. "Yes, I can. I will. Okay. He whispered. Okay. We'll figure it out. He moved back in. That night, he was tender, loving, the perfect husband. The price of his return was my total surrender. The next day, I called my mother's property manager to arrange for Maya to get the keys. I initiated a transfer to cover the down payment on a sensible used Honda for Liam, not a Mustang. A small, pathetic victory that felt like a defeat. As I clicked confirm on the bank transfer, a strange numbness settled over me. The fight was gone. The fear of losing him had proven stronger than my love for myself. I had bought his presence back, and with it, the confirmation of my worst, unspoken fear. In this marriage, I was the commodity, and to keep the buyer, I had to keep devaluing myself. The cage was no longer gilded, it was just cold, hard steel, and I had just proven I would lock it from the inside. The numbness wasn't peace. It was a psychic coma, a thick, insulating layer between my feelings and the reality of my life. I functioned. I went to work, designed logos and websites with a sterile efficiency. I paid bills, including the newly established Liam car payment and Miami condo utilities line items. I smiled at Derek, nodded at Maya's endless self-obsessed monologues, ignored Liam's sullen presence. I was a ghost in my own home, performing the motions of a life I had stopped feeling. The trigger for my reawakening wasn't a grand confrontation. It was a headache, a persistent, drilling pain behind my eyes that my usual over-the-counter meds couldn't touch. My doctor, after ruling out physical causes, gently suggested it might be stress-related and recommended a therapist, Dr. Arden, who specialized in cognitive behavioral therapy and, as my doctor discreetly added, relationship dynamics. I went, not expecting salvation, but desperate for the pain to stop. Dr. Arden's office was calm, beige, and non-judgmental. For the first few sessions, I talked in circles about work stress, family pressure, adjusting to marriage. I painted Derek as the long-suffering hero, myself as the inadequate support system. Dr. Arden, a woman with kind eyes and a deceptively soft voice, listened. Then, one session, she asked, "Nicole, when you think about saying no to a request from Derek or his siblings, what emotion comes up first?" The answer was immediate, visceral. Fear. Fear of what? I opened my mouth to say disappointing him, but that wasn't it. Fear that he'll leave, that he'll get that cold look, that I'll be alone and it will be my fault because I wasn't generous enough, wasn't loving enough. She nodded slowly. And when you give in, when you say yes to something that drains you financially or emotionally, what happens? He's warm again, loving. Things are calm. So your yes purchases temporary calm, and your no triggers withdrawal of affection and threat of abandonment. She said, not as an accusation, but as an observation. That's a powerful dynamic. It has a name. It's called transactional affection, and it's a form of emotional coercion. The words hung in the air. Emotional coercion. It sounded clinical, ugly. It sounded true. I'm not saying that's definitively what's happening. Dr. Arden continued, but I want you to try something. I want you to keep a log, not of events, but of conversations. Write down requests that are made of you. For money, time, resources. Write down your initial gut feeling. Then write down the argument made to change your mind. And finally, write down the outcome and how you felt afterward. It was homework. Simple, detached homework. That night, when Derek mentioned that Maya's brand partnership manager, a title she'd given herself, suggested she needed a new high-end camera for professional consistency, and hinted it would be a shared asset for the family, I didn't react. I just nodded. Later, in a notes app on my phone, locked with a password Derek didn't know, I wrote, request, $3.500 for camera for Maya. Gut feeling, anger, resentment. She has a phone with a great camera. Argument, it's for her career. An investment, We support family. My bonus is tied up in the MBA fees you're covering. Guilt tripping, framing my prior support as a limiting factor for him. Outcome, pending. I said I'd think about it. Derek is being slightly distant, feeling anxious, sick to my stomach, trapped. Seeing it in plain text was like shining a light on a hidden mechanism. The pattern was stark, repetitive. My gut said no. Their argument leveraged guilt, duty, or fear. The outcome was my capitulation, followed by a temporary reward of peace. It was a textbook cycle. I wasn't a partner. I was a stimulus response machine. Insert guilt. Extract resources. A week later, my mother, Evelyn, came for one of her periodic visits. The atmosphere was different this time. I was different. I was observing, not just reacting. I watched as Derek laid on the charm, talking about his MBA courses with newfound fervor. The networking alone is invaluable. Evelyn, he said over dinner, pouring her more wine. I've already connected with a venture capitalist in my cohort. He's fascinated by Liam's friend's startup, that sustainable grocery delivery app one mentioned. Thinks it's the next Instacart. He's looking for solid entry points for investment. Derek's eyes flicked to me, then back to my mother. With the right backing, it could be a unicorn. Life-changing returns. Evelyn took a slow sip of wine, her gaze steady on Derek. Fascinating, she said, her tone devoid of inflection. And what is your friend Liam's role in this potential unicorn? Derek's smile tightened. Oh, Liam's the ideas guy, the vision. He connects the dots. I see. And the venture capitalist, Evelyn continued. He's interested in investing based on Liam's connecting? Well, the business plan, the market analysis, Derek said, a slight defensiveness creeping in. Which you or Liam wrote, that the team is working on it. Evelyn set her glass down with a soft, definitive click. Derek, let me save you some time. I do not invest in ideas guys or vision without a working prototype, a validated market, and a management team with a proven track record. What you're describing is not an investment opportunity. It's a donation wrapped in a fantasy. She smiled, a thin, polite curve of her lips. My advice? Focus on your own degree. That is a tangible asset. The room went silent. Maya stared at her plate. Liam scowled. Derek's face went through a fascinating series of microexpressions. Shock, anger, humiliation, before settling on a mask of respectful acceptance. Of course, Evelyn, I appreciate the insight. You're the expert. Later, in the kitchen, as I loaded the dishwasher, Evelyn stood beside me, drying a plate with meticulous slowness. He's gotten more brazen, she said quietly, not looking at me. The ask is no longer for household extras. It's for capital. Your capital. I didn't deny it. I just kept loading. You're quieter, she observed. The fight's gone out of your eyes. That worries me more than the anger did. I'm just tired. Mom. No, she said, her voice firm. You're defeated. You've surrendered. Which means he's won. I slammed the dishwasher rack shut. What do you want me to do? Leave? You think it's that easy? I think, she said, turning to face me, her eyes like chips of blue ice, that you need to start thinking like a CEO whose company is being hostilely taken over by a rival with no assets, but a very good line of bullshit. You don't flee. You entrench. You gather intelligence. You protect your remaining assets. And then, when you have the leverage, you execute a counter-strategy. Her words were so cold, so strategic, they cut through my numbness. A counter-strategy? He's playing a game. Nicole, a very old, very effective game on vulnerable, generous-hearted people. It's time you learn the rules. Better yet, it's time you change the game entirely. She leaned closer. Start with the phone records, bank statements, credit card bills. Document everything, every transfer, every loan, every time your money subsidizes their lifestyle. Knowledge is power. And right now, He has all the power because he knows exactly how much he's taken. And you're too afraid to look. That night, after everyone was asleep, a strange energy buzzed in my veins. It wasn't hope. It was something darker, sharper, purpose. I remembered Derek's old laptop, the one I'd replaced. He'd said he was going to wipe it and donate it, but it was still shoved in a closet. I retrieved it, my heart hammering. It was out of charge. I plugged it in, praying. It booted up, sluggish but functional. Most files were gone, but the web browser history was a treasure trove of incriminating autofills. More importantly, I found a cache of old text message backups from an app he no longer used. My fingers, cold and clumsy, clicked on a file dated around the time of the NBA discussion. The screen filled with messages between Derek and a group chat titled Shaw Squad, with Liam and Maya. Derek, all right, update. The NBA talk went perfectly. The burdened but trying to be strong act worked like a charm. She's offering to pay. All of it. Maya OMGD. That's huge. Does this mean my Paris influencer trip is back on? Derek, slow down. One thing at a time. Let her get used to the big outflow first. Then we start on the investment opportunities. Liam, my man, knew you could handle her. She's so desperate for you to be the victim hero, she can't see the play. Derek, it's not a play. It's strategy. We're building our future. She's the foundation. A very generous, gullible foundation. Maya, LOL. Did you use the sad puppy eyes? They always work. Derek, the whole repertoire. The sigh. The distant look. The I want to provide for you speech. She ate it up. Remember, in the group chat, we're frustrated but loving siblings supporting our big bro. In person, we're the needy but grateful family. Keep the pressure light but constant. Liam, what's next after the MBA? The condo? Derek, condo is phase 3. Phase 2 is testing the trust fund waters. I'll start talking about our investments and see if she bites. We need to get our names on something solid, like a property, before she wakes up. I scrolled, the messages blurring. Here was the venting he'd described. Here was the male bravado. It was all laid bare data calculated. Cynical conspiracy. They had a strategy. I was phase 3. The foundation. The gullible foundation. The physical reaction was immediate. I clapped a hand over my mouth, ran to the bathroom, and vomited. Dry heaves racked my body long after there was nothing left. The betrayal was so total, so premeditated, it felt like a physical violation. When the heaving stopped, I sat on the cold bathroom floor, tears streaming silently. But they weren't tears of sadness or even anger anymore. They were tears of sheer, unadulterated rage. The fog of numbness incinerated in that fire. Every doubt, every gaslit moment, every manipulated tear, every dollar extracted under false pretenses, it all crystallized into a single, diamond-hard point of clarity. They were laughing at me. The pain was still there, a vast, hollow ache where my love and trust had been, but it was now surrounded by something else. A cold, focused fury. The ghost in the machine had been rebooted, and the new operating system was vengeance. I wiped my face. I went back to the laptop. I didn't just read the messages. I exported them. I took screenshots. I saved them in multiple places. An encrypted cloud drive my mother had set up for me years ago. A hidden folder on my work computer. A USB stick I would later give to Evelyn for safekeeping. Then, I did the hardest thing I'd ever done. I went back to bed. I slid in beside Derek, who was snoring softly. I lay there in the dark, watching the faint light from the street play across his face, the face I'd loved, the face that had lied to me with such tenderness. The love was gone, burned away. What remained was a forensic interest. I studied him like a specimen, like a problem to be solved. Dr. Arden's words about cycles. My mother's words about corporate takeovers. They merged in my mind, forming a new, cold logic. He thought the game was over. He thought I was a conquered territory. He had no idea that the foundation he saw as gullible was about to become quicksand. The next morning, I made blueberry pancakes. I smiled at Derek. A soft, contrite smile. I've been doing a lot of thinking, I said, pouring him coffee. About the future. Our future. You were right. I've been thinking like an individual, not like a team. He looked wary, then pleased. Yeah, I want to be a better partner. This MBA, it's our ticket. I shouldn't have been so anxious about the money. It iced an investment. I let my voice fill with hopeful conviction. And talking to Mom, she's so impressed with you taking this initiative. She mentioned she has some capital looking for a strategic place to land after the first of the year, for a real family project. Derek's eyes lit up with a greed, so naked it was almost beautiful in its purity. She said that? I nodded, lowering my eyes as if shy. She did. She said if we could show her a unified front, a real plan, she might be receptive. She likes go-getters. I watched the wheels turn in his head. Unified front. Family project. His mind went straight to the Westchester house, to the investments he'd been dreaming of. He saw the finish line. He reached across the table, taking my hand. Nicole, this is it. This is what I've been talking about. Us, together, building something real. His thumb stroked my knuckles. The familiar, manipulative gesture. This time, I didn't feel a spark. I felt the cool satisfaction of a fisherman watching a trout take the bait. I know, I said, squeezing his hand back. My smile, perfectly calibrated. We just have to show her we're serious. A solid plan. Maybe we could talk about it at Thanksgiving? When everyone's together, make it a family announcement. His grin was triumphant. Thanksgiving. That's perfect. A time for family, for gratitude. He leaned in and kissed me. I let him, my lips passive against his. Inside, my mind was already several moves ahead, drafting the guest list for his downfall. The hunter, finally aware she was prey, had decided to become the hunter. And the first rule of the hunt was to make the prey believe it was still in control. The realization that I was no longer a victim, but a strategist in my own life changed everything. Fear, once a crippling constant, morphed into a cold, humming focus. The love I'd felt for Derek was gone, scraped out of me by the raw proof of his betrayal, leaving behind a cavity perfect for housing my resolve. I felt no sadness, only a clarity so sharp it was almost painful. Every smile, every touch, every word I now directed at him was a calculated move on a board only I could see. My first stop was the office of Eleanor Vance, a family law attorney whose name my mother had whispered to me with a look that meant the best. And discreet, Eleanor was in her 50s, with a sharp blonde bob and eyes that missed nothing. I want to understand my position, I told her, my voice steady, my hands folded calmly on the polished mahogany desk between us. I laid it out, the marriage, the separate assets, thank God for my premarital trust fund and the securities, the commingling of funds for household expenses, the MBA payments, the constant stream of gifts and loans to his siblings, the evidence of conspiracy from the old laptop. Eleanor listened, her expression neutral, taking precise notes. When I finished, she set down her pen. Based on what you've told me, and particularly with the evidence of premeditated financial exploitation, you have a very strong position. New York is an equitable distribution state, but given the short duration of the marriage and your ability to prove these funds were your separate property used under what could be construed as false pretenses or duress, it's unlikely he'd get much, if any, of your premarital assets. The MBA tuition is trickier. IT could be argued as a gift, or as marital debt he's responsible for, depending on how it's presented. The key will be documentation and establishing a pattern. Establish a pattern. I repeated, What do I need? Everything. Bank statements, credit card bills, wire transfer confirmations, emails, texts that, especially anywhere he or his siblings acknowledge the money is a loan or discuss their plans. The messages you've recovered are golden. They show intent. You need to create a clear, chronological financial trail that shows the depletion of your separate assets for his and his family's benefit. Also, start separating your finances now. Open a new, individual checking account at a different bank. Redirect your design income there. Do not close joint accounts yet, as that can look suspicious, but stop funding them. I want a post-nuptial agreement, I said, one that clearly separates all future assets and outlines the repayment of the MBA tuition as a personal loan to him. Eleanor gave a small, approving smile, aggressively protective. I like it. We can draft one. He's unlikely to sign it unless he believes there's a significant carrot attached. There will be, I said, my mind already working. I also want to know about clawbacks. If I can prove the money to his siblings was given under duress or based on fraudulent representations, can I get it back? That's a much taller order, and would likely involve separate civil suits against them. Possible, but messy and expensive. Focus on the divorce first. A favorable settlement can include a lump sum that, psychologically, serves the same purpose. Revenge is a dish best served with a hefty check made out to you. Revenge. She said the word without flinching. It sounded clean, professional, legal. Over the next weeks, I became a ghost in the machinery of my own life. I smiled at Derek's plans. I nodded at Maya's vapid schemes. I endured Liam's grunts. All while, in the background, I worked. I opened a new account at a bank Derek didn't know. I quietly redirected my freelance payments. I began the slow, careful process of liquidating non-retirement investments from my portfolio, citing market rebalancing to my financial advisor that a story I knew Derek, with his new MBA vocabulary, would find plausible. The money moved into accounts my mother helped me set up, a labyrinth of holdings he could never trace. I met with my mother, not for comfort, but for tactical planning. We sat in the quiet back room of her favorite art gallery, surrounded by cool, abstract sculptures. He's taken the bait about your capital. I told her. He's salivating. Good, Evelyn said, sipping her espresso. A greedy man is a predictable man. He'll overreach. What's the play? Thanksgiving. At your place. He's going to make a grand gesture. A family announcement about securing the future. I'm going to encourage it. Make him feel like it's his moment of triumph. And then, you're going to ask the question. Evelyn's eyes gleamed. The income question. The one that makes the gesture impossible without your money. Exactly. He'll be trapped in front of everyone. The hero with no army. The provider with no means. That's when I walk away. Publicly. Theatrically. It's a good scene, she acknowledged. But scenes don't hold up in court. The evidence does. Do you have everything? I handed her the USB drive. Financial records. The chat logs. A timeline. Eleanor Vance has copies. Evelyn took the drive. Her face a mask of grim satisfaction. My girl, she said, and for the first time in years, there was no pity in her voice, only pride. Back in the lion's den, I played my part flawlessly. When Derek talked about his classes, I was the rapt, admiring wife. That strategic management framework sounds fascinating. Honey, you'll have to explain it to me again. I fed his intellectual vanity. When Maya lamented the poor lighting in my apartment for her golden hour shoots, I sighed sympathetically. You're so right. Natural light is everything. You know, Mom's place in Miami has floor-to-ceiling windows facing the ocean. The light is just transformative. It's a shame it sits empty most of the year. I saw the avaricious gleam in her eye. The hook was set. When Liam mumbled about his latest get-rich-quick scheme, that this time, importing artisanal sneakers from a dubious overseas supplier that I didn't shut him down. I turned to Derek, my face full of wifely concern. You know, with your supply chain management focus, maybe you could help him structure that. It could be a great practical application of your MBA. Derek puffed up, thrilled to be seen as the expert. You know, babe, that's not a bad idea. Liam, we should talk logistics, customs, capital requirements. He was already mentally spending money I hadn't even explicitly offered yet. I became a master of the subtle nudge, the implied promise. Once you finish this semester, everything will feel more possible, I'd say. Or, when we're all more financially stable, imagine what we could do. I spoke in a future tense that was deliberately vague but intoxicating to them. I was building a beautiful castle in the air, and they were already picking out their throne rooms. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, Derek wrapped his arms around me from behind, nuzzling my neck. You've been so supportive lately. It means everything. I leaned back into him, forcing my body to relax. We're a team. I finally see that. This MBA, it's not just your degree. It's our future, all of ours. I turned in his arms, looking up at him with what I hoped was convincing earnestness. We should celebrate that. At Thanksgiving, at Mom's. It's a time for family, for announcing good things. His eyes searched mine, looking for the trap, finding only my carefully constructed devotion. He grinned. You're serious? You think it's the right time? Absolutely. It's perfect. We can present a united front. Show Mom our vision. It'll be a declaration. I let the word hang, ripe with significance. A declaration, he repeated, savoring it. I love that. He kissed me, and I let him, my mind far away, reviewing my checklist. Secure legal counsel. Check. Separate finances. In progress. Gather evidence. Check. Enlist mother as ally. Check. Bait the trap. Check. The final piece fell into place a week before Thanksgiving. I was working late at the office, actually at Eleanor Vance's, reviewing the draft of the blisteringly one-sided post-nup that when my phone buzzed, it was a text from Derek, sent to our shared thread with Maya and Liam. Derek, big family meeting tomorrow night. Nicole and I have something important to discuss regarding future planning and support. Get your ideas ready. This is it. A minute later, a separate message popped up. From Derek to me alone. Derek, don't want to get their hopes up too high before we talk, but I'm thinking we frame it as a new family advancement fund. We can pool resources for big ticket items that benefit everyone. What do you think? I stared at the screen. Pool resources. My resources. His audacity was breathtaking. He was already drafting the bylaws for his new kingdom, with me as the treasury. I typed back, my fingers steady. Me. That sounds like a great way to think about it. A unified approach. Can't wait to discuss. I put the phone down and looked at Eleanor. They're having a strategy meeting tomorrow, without me, to get their ideas ready. She didn't look up from the document she was reviewing. Let them. The more they plan, the more entangled they become in their own greed. It will make the unraveling that much more satisfying. And legally, any planning they do based on the expectation of your continued funding only strengthens your case for dissipation of assets. The night before Thanksgiving, the atmosphere in our apartment was electric with their anticipation. Maya was prattling about content house possibilities in LA. Liam was researching import tariffs. Derek was polishing his vision speech. I moved among them like a ghost, a serene smile on my face, packing an overnight bag for my mother's, as I folded a simple black dress and white armor for the next day. Derek came into the bedroom. He was glowing with self-congratulatory excitement. This is it, Nick. Tomorrow, we change everything. We show your mom. We show everyone what this family is capable of when we pull together. I know, I said, zipping up the bag. It's going to be a Thanksgiving to remember. He pulled me into a hug. resting his chin on my head. I'm so lucky to have you. You're the rock, the foundation. I closed my eyes, not returning the hug, just enduring it. You have no idea that I thought. The cold focus settling over me like a mantle. You're standing on quicksand, and tomorrow, I'm going to pull the lever. I was no longer the prey, or even the hunter lying in wait. I was the architect, and the blueprint for the collapse was complete. Every beam of their greed, every nail of their entitlement was in place. All that was left was to remove the final, invisible support. My consent. The game was over. They just didn't know they'd already lost. My mother's dining room was a stage set for a particular kind of American perfection. Crisp white linen. Her grandmother's sterling silver flatware gleaming under the crystal chandelier. The scent of roasted turkey. Sage. And apple pie weaving through the air like a promise of comfort. It was a picture of tradition, of stability, of generational grace. It was the perfect backdrop for a slaughter. I sat at the table, a study in calm. My simple black dress felt like armor. My nails were manicured, my makeup flawless, my smile a serene mask. Inside, my heart was a still, cold thing, a lump of obsidian in my chest. Derek sat beside me, radiating a barely contained, triumphal energy. He'd worn his best suit, a navy one he'd bought for a job interview years ago, and kept squeezing my knee under the table, a proprietary gesture that once would have warmed me. Now, it felt like a branding iron. Across from me, Maya was preening, dressed in an absurdly short, sparkly dress more suited to a nightclub than a family dinner. She'd been filming GRWM for a classy Thanksgiving content in the guest bathroom for an hour. Liam, in a wrinkled button-down, scrolled through his phone, glancing up only when the wine was poured. My mother, Evelyn, presided at the head of the table, an inscrutable queen in cashmere. She caught my eye for a fleeting second, her gaze as sharp and assessing as a surgeon's scalpel. A silent, confirming nod passed between us. The players were in position. The meal began with strained civility. Maya talked at length about her engagement metrics. Liam grunted about the corporate grind he planned to avoid. Derek nodded along, playing the proud paterfamilias, seamlessly steering the conversation back to his own achievements, the grueling MBA workload, the valuable connections, the big picture thinking he was developing. It's all about legacy, he said, swirling his Pinot Noir with an air of newfound sophistication. Not just what you acquire, but what you build for the people who come after you. His gaze swept meaningfully around the table, lingering on his siblings. Here, Maya chirped, raising her glass. To legacy. Liam mumbled something that might have been cool. I smiled, a small, tight curve of my lips. To building. I echoed softly, lifting my own glass. My mother merely took a sip, her expression unreadable. As the pumpkin pie was served, the air thickened with anticipation. Derek cleared his throat, the sound overly loud in the suddenly quiet room. He laid his fork down with deliberate care. This was his moment. Evelyn, Nicole, everyone. He began, his voice taking on a resonant, rehearsed quality. I'm so grateful to be here, in this beautiful home, with family. It really makes you think about what's important. He reached over and took my hand. I let my fingers lie limply in his. This past year has been one of immense growth for me, for us. And a big part of that growth has been realizing that my success, our success, isn't truly meaningful unless it lifts everyone up. Maya was leaning forward, her phone subtly angled on her lap. Liam had even put his phone down. I've watched my brother and sister struggle to find their footing in this world. Derek continued, his voice thickening with faux emotion. Liam, with his incredible entrepreneurial mind, held back by a system that doesn't value vision. Maya, with her creativity and drive, battling an algorithm that demands constant investment. And I've realized I have a responsibility. No more than that, a calling. He paused for effect, his eyes shining with self-congratulatory tears. I felt a hysterical laugh bubble in my throat and forced it down. So, he declared, his voice ringing with finality, I've made a decision. As of today, I am formally committing to fund Liam's entrepreneurial ventures and Maya's content creation career, tuition for any courses they need, equipment, living expenses. Whatever it takes to help them achieve their dreams. They will have my full financial support, no strings attached. The reaction was instantaneous and orchestrated. Maya gasped, her hands flying to her mouth, her eyes instantly welling up with camera-ready tears. Derek, oh my God, brother. She launched herself from her chair and threw her arms around his neck from behind. Liam actually managed to look moved. Wow, man, that's huge. Thank you. He gave Derek a solemn nod. The grifter's version of deep gratitude. Derek patted Maya's arm, beaming, the benevolent patriarch. He looked at me, expecting my proud, supportive smile. I gave him a slight, enigmatic tilt of my head. He mistook it for emotional overwhelm. He then turned his grand, magnanimous gaze to my mother. Evelyn, I know you value self-sufficiency, but I hope you see this as an investment in family, in potential. It's the foundation of the legacy Nicole and I want to build. The room hung in a suspended, breathless moment. The performance had reached its crescendo. They were all looking at my mother, waiting for her approval, her impressed nod, her acknowledgement of Derek's noble sacrifice. Evelyn set her dessert fork down with a soft, precise clink in the china. She took a slow, deliberate sip of water, then dabbed her lips with her napkin. Every movement was calm, controlled, lethal. That is a significant commitment. Derek, she said, her voice cool and clear, cutting through the sentimental haze like a winter wind. Truly commendable. Derek's chest swelled. Maya sniffled prettily. Then Evelyn continued. Tell me, what is your monthly net income from your operations manager position? After taxes, 401k health insurance? Derek's smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. Oh, well, it varies with bonuses, but give me a rough average. Evelyn interrupted, her tone pleasant but leaving no room for evasion. She might have been asking about the weather. Around 7,500, Derek said, the number sounding pathetically small in the opulent room. $7,500, Evelyn repeated, as if writing it on an invisible blackboard. And the projected annual cost of this new family endowment? Tuition at even a state school for Liam, high-end equipment, and a content creation allowance for Maya, plus their living expenses. Let's be conservative. Shall we say 50,000? 60? Derek's face began to lose its color. He shifted in his seat. Well, it's not. We'd scale it based on need. And of course, they'd contribute where they could. So, roughly your entire annual post-tax salary, Evelyn concluded, her blue eyes fixed on him, unblinking, just for their support, leaving nothing for your mortgage, your utilities, your groceries, your own wife, unless, of course, the funding is coming from another source. Her gaze didn't waver. Is it? Silence. Thick, deafening, horrible silence. Maya's tears had dried up, replaced by a pinched, anxious look. Liam was staring at his brother, his brow furrowed in confusion. Derek's mouth opened, then closed. He looked like a fish gasping on a dock. He glanced at me, a quick, desperate plea for intervention. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I simply watched. We'd manage. He finally stammered, his voice hollow. We'd make it work. As a family. I said, and the sound of my own voice, steady and cold, surprised even me. All eyes snapped to me. I slowly withdrew my hand from under Derek's, which had gone clammy. That's the operative word, isn't it, Derek? We would manage. I reached down beside my chair and lifted my leather portfolio onto the table. The sound of the clasp opening was like a gunshot in the quiet room. Over the past 22 months, I began, my voice projecting, clear and calm. Ihave paid $32,000 for your executive MBA at Columbia. I pulled out the first sheet, a summary I'd prepared with Eleanor. Ihave paid $8,400 in emergency car repairs, credit card bills, and loans to Liam that were never repaid. I placed the page on the table, facing them. Liam's face flushed crimson. Hey, those were. Ihave covered $15,000 for Maya's brand development. I continued, overriding him, placing another page, including a leased camera, software subscriptions, and the utilities for my mother's Miami condo for the 6 weeks she used it as a free influencer retreat. I looked at Maya, whose mouth was a perfect, shocked the down payment on Liam's car, the insurance premiums, the extra groceries, the doubled utility bills, the furniture your dog ruined. Maya, I placed each summarized page on the table like a playing card in a winning hand. A conservative total of just over $68,000. That's my savings. That's my inheritance from my grandfather. That was my safety net. Derek had found his voice, but it was a strangled, angry thing. Nicole, what is this? This is private. How dare you ambush me like this in front of the family? I finished for him, my eyebrow arching. The family you were just so heroically pledging to support? I think they have a right to know where the money for this grand legacy was actually coming from, because it sure as hell wasn't coming from your $7,500 a month. I reached into the portfolio one last time. I didn't pull out a paper. I pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen, and the audio from his old laptop. The damning group chat conversation filled the hushed room. His voice, cocky and cruel, echoed in the elegant space. She's so naive. It's almost cute. Thinks love is about sharing. It's about acquisition. Man, strategic acquisition. The color drained completely from Derek's face, leaving him a ghastly gray. Maya looked like she might be sick. Liam stared at the table, his jaw clenched. I stopped the playback. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the faint tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. You were a strategy, I said, looking directly at Derek, my voice devoid of all emotion. A mark, a gullible foundation. You and your siblings had meetings about how best to warm me up for my trust fund. You weren't building a legacy. Derek, you were conducting a hostile takeover of my life. He was shaking his head, not in denial, but in a frantic, animal panic. That was taken out of context. I was venting. You know that. We talked about this. He was scrambling, reverting to the old script, but the audience was no longer buying it. The raw, exposed truth of his own words hung in the air, undeniable. The context, my mother said, her voice slicing through his bluster, is a pattern of financial exploitation and deceit. The context is you leveraging my daughter's generosity and love to subsidize your siblings and your own advancement while systematically isolating her and undermining her confidence. The context, young man, is that you're a fraud. Derek stood up, so quickly his chair screeched backward. You set me up. He hissed at me, his eyes wide with betrayal and fury. This whole thing, the support, the talk about your mother's capital, it was a trap. Finally, I smiled, a real, cold, unforgiving smile. I learned from the best. Derek, you taught me that everything is a strategy. You just never expected me to start playing the game. I looked at Maya and Liam, who were shrinking in their seats. You too, the ideas guy and the creative. Your brother sold you a fantasy funded by my bank account. The party's over. You will be vacating my apartment by the end of the weekend. You will return any property of mine or my mother's in your possession, and you will consider any further contact to be harassment. My lawyer will be in touch regarding the possibility of repaying the loans you so generously accepted. I turned my attention back to Derek, who was trembling with rage. You will be served with divorce papers next week. The post-nuptial agreement you will be signing. If you want to avoid a very public, very ugly court battle where I play that recording for a judge, stipulates that you assume full responsibility for the MBA tuition as a personal debt to me. You get nothing else, not a cent of my past assets, not a claim on my future. You walked into this marriage with a suitcase. You'll walk out with the same suitcase, plus a $60,000 debt. The finality of it, the sheer, detailed destruction of his world, seemed to break him. You bitch, he whispered, the venom pure and undiluted. All pretense of the loving husband, the noble provider, was gone. This was the real Derek. Cornered, vicious, and small. You cold, calculating bitch. You led me on. You made me think. I made you think the well would never run dry. I finished for him, standing up now, my height matching his. I made you think I was too weak, too stupid, and too in love with you to ever see you for what you are. My mistake, but it's corrected now. Then, I did what I had been dreaming of for months. I reached for the simple platinum band on my left hand. I didn't tug or struggle. It slid off easily, as if it had been waiting for this moment. The metal was warm from my skin. I held it up, letting the light from the chandelier catch it for a brief, glittering second. I looked at Derek, at his pale, furious face, at the ruins of his grand Thanksgiving announcement lying around him like broken glass. I thought of every lie, every manipulation, every dollar taken, every piece of my soul chipped away. So, I said, my voice echoing in the silent, ruined room, using my money to fund your heroism? I let the ring drop. It hit his empty dessert plate with a single, pure, high-pitched ping. Game over. The silence in the wake of the ringing wedding band was a living thing, thick and suffocating. It was broken by the sound of Derek's chair crashing to the floor as he stumbled back from the table. His face, pale moments before, was now mottled with furious red patches. He looked less like a man and more like a cornered animal, his eyes darting from my cold expression to my mother's imperious glare to the damning papers on the table. You can't do this. He spat, the words choked with rage. This is theft. Extortion. That money was a gift. You can't take it back. Eleanor Vance, who had been waiting like a specter in my mother's study, chose that moment to enter the dining room. She moved with a quiet, professional authority, a leather folio under her arm. Actually, Mr. Shaw, she can, she said, her voice cool and clipped. Under New York domestic relations law, gifts given in contemplation of marriage can be subject to recoupment in cases of fraud or duress. Given the evidence of a concerted scheme to separate your wife from her assets, evidence, which includes your own admissions that a court will likely view these transfers not as gifts, but as a pattern of financial exploitation. The premarital nature of the funds strengthens her case considerably. Derek stared at her, his mind visibly struggling to process the legal terminology. Who the hell are you? Eleanor Vance, Ms. Talbot's attorney. These, she said, placing 2 thick packets of paper on the table beside my financial summary, are the filed divorce petition and the proposed post-nuptial separation agreement. The latter outlines the terms Nicole mentioned. You assume the $32,000 MBA tuition as a personal debt, and you waive any claim to her premarital or separate property. Sign it, and the divorce proceeds quickly and quietly. Fight it. She gave a small, cold smile. We will subpoena your siblings' bank records, your text histories, and present the audio recording to the court. We will also file civil suits against Mr. Liam Shaw and Ms. Maya Shaw for the repayment of funds received under fraudulent pretenses. The discovery process will be invasive for everyone. Maya let out a small, Strangled cry. You can't sue me. Those were gifts. You wanted to help. I turned my gaze to her. I wanted to help my husband's sweet, struggling sister, not a co-conspirator who laughed about me being a gullible foundation in a group chat. The choice is yours. You can return the camera, the jewelry you borrowed, and vacate my apartment peacefully. Or you can explain to a judge why you deserve to keep $15,000 worth of equipment and vacations paid for by a woman you were actively scheming against. Liam finally found his voice. A surly, defensive growl. This is bullshit. You led us on. You acted like family. Family doesn't itemize their affection in a spreadsheet of demands. I said, my voice even. You have until Sunday to get out. After that, I will have the locks changed and any remaining property will be considered abandoned. Your choice. The next 72 hours were a symphony of slammed doors, shouted phone calls, and packing boxes filled with my pilfered belongings. Derek oscillated between fury and desperate bargaining. He showed up at my temporary room in my mother's townhouse, his eyes bloodshot. Nicole, please, he begged. The picture of tortured remorse. You're throwing away everything we had over a misunderstanding. I love you. I was stressed. I said stupid things to my brother to sound like a big man. That's all it was. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. I stood in the doorway, not letting him in. The only thing that needs fixing is your signature on Eleanor's papers. Derek, the man I loved, never existed. He was a sales pitch. His mask slipped again. You'll regret this. You'll be alone. You think any real man will want a bitter, vindictive woman like you? I'd rather be alone than be with a man whose love is a line item in a budget. I replied, and closed the door in his face. The divorce proceedings were not a battle. They were swift. Clinical execution, faced with the ironclad evidence that the financial forensics, the chat logs, the audio recording that Derek's lawyer advised him to settle, the threat of the civil suits against Maya and Liam, which would have bled them dry with legal fees, even if they'd somehow won, was the final lever. The Family Advancement Fund was dissolved before it ever opened for business. The final hearing was anticlimactic. A sterile room, a judge, a few murmured answers. When it was over, I was no longer Nicole Shaw. I was Nicole Talbot again. Derek was ordered to pay me $32,000 in monthly installments to the formal recognition of his debt. He left the courthouse looking diminished, his nice suit hanging loosely on him, his grand plans reduced to a payment plan. The fallout was swift and satisfying in its schadenfreude. Without my subsidy, the reality of their lives crashed down. Derek, saddled with debt and the abrupt end of his lavish MBA-funded lifestyle, had to drop out of the program with only a semester completed, left with nothing but a hefty bill and no degree to show for it. The promotion at work evaporated. I heard through the grapevine he'd moved to a cheaper, far-flung suburb and was back to grinding in middle management, his dreams of being a provider reduced to providing for himself. Maya's influencer career collapsed without its secret funding. The high-end camera was returned. The Miami condo photos were deleted. She was forced to get a real job, a fact she bemoaned on social media before her follower count plummeted. Liam's grand entrepreneurial ventures never materialized. The artisanal sneaker scheme fell apart when he was asked for capital. He drifted from one low-wage gig to another. I, meanwhile, worked, not just at my design job, but on myself. Therapy with Dr. Arden was no longer about surviving the day. It was about dismantling the mechanisms of guilt and obligation that had allowed me to be exploited. I rebuilt my savings, not just as a number in an account, but as a fortress around my autonomy. A year to the day after the divorce was finalized, I sat across from my mother in the same art gallery back room. The sculptures around us seemed less like cold abstractions and more like representations of solid, reformed shapes. The final installment came through. I said, placing a check on the table between us. It was from Derek, for the last of the MBA debt. $32,000. Every cent. Evelyn didn't touch it. What will you do with it? It's blood money, I said quietly. I don't want it in my life. She nodded, understanding. So give it a new purpose. That was the seed. The $32,000 became the founding grant. I added a substantial sum of my own. My mother matched it. We established the Talbot Resilience Fund. It wasn't a charity for vague dreams. It was a targeted, no-nonsense grant program for women fleeing financial abuse, controlling relationships, or who had been economically entrapped. It paid for retraining courses, security deposits on first apartments, legal fees, therapy co-pays. We vetted applicants with the same rigor Derek had pretended to apply to investments. We looked for drive, for a plan, for that spark of self-preservation that needed just a little fuel to become a fire. The fund's office was a bright, airy space downtown. I was there late one evening, reviewing a batch of applications. One was from a woman who had paid for her husband's paralegal certificate, only for him to leave her once licensed. Another was from a young mother whose partner had drained their shared accounts for a failed franchise. Their stories were different in the details, but achingly familiar in the pattern. The fund couldn't erase their pain, but it could offer a tangible first step toward a life they controlled. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sasha. Still working. Don't become a martyr to your own foundation. Drinks. Now. I'm outside. I smiled, saved my work, and grabbed my coat, stepping out of the building. The cold night air was bracing. The city lights glittered, not like trapped jewels, but like possibilities. Sasha was leaning against her car, holding 2 steaming to-go cups from the artisan coffee shop next door. Hot toddy. You look like you need it. I look like I need sleep. I laughed, taking the cup. Same thing. She eyed me. You good? I looked back at the building, at the small, discreet plaque by the door that read Talbot Resilience Fund. I thought of the hollow ring on a china plate, the sound of a lock clicking shut on an empty apartment, the quiet strength in my mother's eyes, the grateful, determined faces of the women we were helping. Yeah, I said, and for the first time in a very long time. I meant it completely. I am. I hadn't just gotten revenge. I had taken the currency of my exploitation, the money, the learned strategy, the cold clarity and minted it into something new, something that could break cycles instead of perpetuating them. The cage was gone. In its place was an open sky and the freedom to build whatever I wanted next. The foundation, finally, was my own.